first of all, thanks. Welcome to thanks for coming on and doing the podcast. I've been a fan of yours for quite some time, and I had the pleasure of meeting you finally. Thanks for doing the podcast. I appreciate this.
Well, I'm very grateful that you invited me to speak today, and it was great meeting you on the set last month. Really
I
wonderful.
Now I guess I should let everyone know. I mean, you're an author.
Yes,
You're also a psychic and a medium. You have a background in tarot and uh, palmistry and
correct.
I'm sure psychometry probably.
Right,
Uh,
I do. Yeah, I kind of do the whole gamut of tarot, palmistry, psychometry, crystal gazing, mediumship.
it's funny about the tarot. I have some really close friends that are just recently getting into tarot, and it's funny how it comes in waves. I mean, I used to hear about it when I was a kid, and then there was a period there where I didn't really run in circles where there were a lot of people doing it, and it's now it's getting there's a whole new wave coming.
I know, I know. I see that too. In fact, I was just talking to another friend of mine the other day who's also a psychic, and we were mentioning about that, how it does go in cycles. And it seemed years ago, it was, probably in the, late 80s, early 90s, it was really, really strong. Mid 80s, it was really strong. And then it kind of died down a little bit, came back, died down. And, I'm not really sure where it's at now because it seems like most of the classes that people have really aren't as strong as they were, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I think the Internet has a lot to do with that because I think a lot of people are just studying the information on the Internet because the people that I talk to, we've all taught for the last 20 years, and I'm not teaching right now because it goes. It's an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
So I do think the Internet has a lot to do with it. There's a great deal of information on the Internet, and then there's some garbage on the Internet too,
Oh
just like
yeah.
in any subject, So I think for people who are in locations that it's not accessible to find a teacher or a class, the Internet's perfect for that.
Yeah, it's funny. The friends that I have, you would not expect them to have any kind of interest in tarot or anything esoteric, and I'm surprised, when I find, that that someone is even interested in the tarot. I don't know. It's always surprising to me. And I guess we just had, I guess it was just either the birthday of who was it? I can't remember the Ritter. It was like two names of the deck of the tarot deck.
The Rider Waite deck,
Yeah, it was the artist
the
that had,
writer.
yeah, her, it was her,
Pamela Coleman Smith is the artist.
yeah, her birthday was just like last week, I believe.
Oh,
And so I posted on Facebook. I posted this. I knew it was her. Her birthday was coming up, so I posted this thing, and I posted a little video about the history
hmm
of the tarot, and a lot of people emailed me that knew it, that I had no idea would even know of such a thing. But well, and also didn't you like started aren't you like the head of like a tarot society in California or
so Well, I did start the North Orange County Tarot Society. I think it was back in 2000 or 2001. And what that was basically is that we met every month at a restaurant, and I had the back room. And people could just come in and have dinner and listen to a guest speaker. So every month I had a different speaker talking about different aspects of the tarot, and I did book signings. I had authors that came in, and that was in Orange County, California. When I moved up here to LA County, I switched it over to the Tarot Society, and I actually have not been really active in doing anything as far as groups because of just my schedule. So I think
right?
I'll be able to kind of start something in the future here. But it was a society that really there was no memberships, there was no dues, anything. It was just a place where people could come and get together and learn about the tarot. And what was so fascinating about that is that we had people that knew nothing about the tarot, but maybe they came with a friend, people that were just starting to learn, and people that had been doing the tarot for, 20 years. And all of them came away with something new. And I think that's the beautiful part of the tarot. No matter how much I know about it and study, there's always something new that I learn.
Hmm.
When I go back into a new book or an old book, I usually like buying looking through the used bookstores and finding the older books. there's something that's always there. It's endless and it's timeless. And to me, I don't believe in tarot masters. I don't think that anybody can say that they are a tarot master, because to me a master is someone who has completed something and they're at the top and there's nothing more for them to learn. And with the tarot, there's always something to learn because it's evolving. It's the pictorial book of our lives. And as we evolve or devolve, we're going to see that in the tarot. And
Okay,
so,
I guess
go ahead.
like, I always think I know, what I'm talking about when I talk to my friends, and I'll ask them a question, and they'll always say, "Well, no, that's not what the tarot does." I mean, no, it seems like no matter how I phrase a question, they always explain to me, "No, that's not what the tarot does." But I mean, if for someone who has absolute, obviously like me, that has no idea what the tarot is, I mean, can you explain to me, if I mean, is it a reading? Is it a tarot reading? What happens?
You
What's
know
actually going
what?
on?
Really, there's many different layers that the tarot does. So it's you could have, and there are schools of thoughts that teach, that you just read the tarot by the meanings in the cards. And I'm just going to refer back to the Rider-Waite deck, and then we'll talk about all
Okay.
the different decks later. But just say, meaning of that, like the Builders of Beatitude, and they have a home study course which is fabulous, and it's all on the meanings, the colors, the symbols, everything. You can go very in deep depth with that. And you don't have to be a psychic to read these cards. I've had readings done by card readers who knew, were not using any psychic ability at all, but they knew what the symbolism was, and those readings were very accurate. I've had readings by psychics who, were reading the cards that were not accurate. It's like, what the heck are they talking about?
Hmm.
So the tarot is really it's a reflection of a lot of things. It will pick up the energies of everything that's going around us, past, present, and probable futures. And the reason why I say probable, because they'll show you something there, but it's our free will if we want to go, if we continue on the path, okay, this looks like that may occur. To give you an example, when we're given a card that is a warning card, I fully believe that we're given that to try to warn off, to try to divert from that happening. That's why it's a warning card. It's not written in stone saying, okay, darn, this is going to happen. Say if I pick up a card and ask somebody, say, well, there's somebody around you that's drinking really heavily, you may want to talk to them because, probably in 6 months they're going to be busted, for drunk driving, and you don't want that to happen. So, maybe if they can talk to that person, that's fine. If that person isn't receptive, then it's probably going to happen. See, those cards are to give us a heads up, let's say. I like to say they're like speed bumps in the road. So
Yeah.
should I slow down a little bit so I don't lose control, you know?
When I guess the question I have is like, the person that's doing the reading. Are you asking a question and they pull out a card, and is it almost like, is it like dream interpretation? These cards come up and it's these different symbols, and it's like, okay, well, this is how this might relate to the question that the person. I mean, I guess I.
Well, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and I hope I'm answering it,
Oh,
to fit your question. But yeah, like sometimes people will say, okay, what about this? And you pull a card, and I don't like the yes or no questions. It's like, am I going to get married? Yes,
sure.
no. Well, it's like
Yeah.
there's too many variables. Like, okay, should I change my job? Well, you never make a major decision or change because the psychic tells you to. It's for,
Oh, I
clarification
know
and
people
guidance.
that I know people
Yeah.
that do.
I mean, I don't even. That's too much responsibility
Yeah.
for me to have over someone. It's like, God, I have enough time with my own life, trying to take responsibility for that. So if when I'm reading a card, what I'm doing is that, okay, I'm going to read the energies that are around that situation, and the person should be able to come up. Let's say, okay, if I pull a card, like say, I'm having some problems, I'm not really sure what's going on with work,
Oh.
and I pull the Five of Wands, which shows a conflict of work. It's like, yeah, there's some things going on here with your coworkers that, isn't working out. What's going on? Where can you change, or do you need to leave the situation? And then depending on the other cards that come up, we would examine that. So there are some things where you could just say, here's my question, what's the answer? And it's, to me, it's not that simple. It's like these are the variables that you have to work with.
Right.
When I do a reading, I'll do the spread, and I just tell the people, hold off asking any questions, and let me just tell you what I see in the cards first, and then we will open it up for questions. And by the time I'm done, I've answered all of their questions anyway, and then we can go back and just kind of re-examine specific areas. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I guess I'm, just a little naive because I used to think, well, I have this thing. I don't. Maybe it's like a Tourette's kind of, not Tourette's. What am I trying to say? It's like an OCD thing. But sometimes if I'm, if there's something like I have a question going on, I will
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just go to my bookshelf and grab a random book, or sometimes I do it in a bookstore, and I'll have this question in my head, and I'll just randomly thumb through a book without looking, and then hit my finger on on a paragraph and see if there's any possible answer I can get from that. I don't know. I know that
Right.
sounds weird, but I remember when I was younger, I was in a car with a guy, and he was we were talking. I was like we were talking about girlfriend problems, and he said, he says, he goes, okay, well, here's what I always do. If I have a question, what I do is I'll ask the question and I'll just turn on the radio, and whatever the first thing that comes out of the radio, is like the answer. And I remember we were talking about girlfriend troubles, and then he says, okay, what am I going to do about his situation? So he turns on the radio, and the first thing was the Beatles were singing "All You Need Is Love," and I just remember that was such a shocking moment to me that happened to be the thing that came out of the radio at that moment.
Oh, that is hilarious. I forget what they call about. They call that. There's a certain name for when you do go to a book and okay, you ask the question and then you open it up and you usually will find your answer.
Yeah.
There's a certain name for that. I forget what it's called.
But I guess I wondered if the cards, the way the tarot is arranged, is it the universe that's arranging the card? I mean, it's the randomness, and then when the person pulls out the card, is it
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, I think it really is the energy of the subconscious of the person,
Yeah.
and I think it just because it's the tarot is like a key that unlocks that door to the subconscious. So, as you're shuffling the cards, then I always ask the person, go ahead and what is it that you're concerned in? You don't have to tell me, but just think of one thing that you would like an answer to, and other things will come up. And I really do think it all transfers through the energy field, the hands, the shuffling, whatever. I really do feel it's unlocking the subconscious, and the tarot is just the key to that. And I mean, there's people who use it for psychology, for
Sure.
coaching. There's many ways to use the tarot without even doing a reading. I mean, you can use as far as divination. I mean, you can go beyond that and just use it for, self-improvement, okay? What area, would you like to expand on? Like, say, if you're looking, okay, ask a question, like, how about career? Like, what area would you go into or something like that?
Yeah.
And so if then you pick a card, and let's say if somebody's asking that question and they pick the card of justice, it's like, well, maybe it's a law. Are you interested in some form of law? Could it be a lawyer? Could it be working with the police department? Could it be working in a nonprofit organization as a volunteer for justice? There's a whole lot of things there. So I really do feel that there's many levels that the tarot reach. It's not only for divination, and that's the difference. Because if we're going for a reading, it'll be for divination and empowerment, but some readers will only read for the self, and that's okay too.
So there's some tarot readers that are specialized. Is that what you mean? They're like they have their area kind of that they
Well, yeah, I mean, so, well,
or technique, I suppose,
yeah,
maybe.
I would say technique. I went to one reader who is really excellent. She's a scholar, and she doesn't read. Well, she claims she doesn't read. Doing divination, but she's so psychic and wonderful. But it's more like, okay, these are the cards that come up. Where are your blocks? What are you doing? And even on my website, I have a section of articles of like, okay, changing the energy. So let me pull 3 cards, and what is that telling me how I can change the energy? So there is tarot for self-improvement, self-empowerment, and then there's tarot for divination. They are two different things.
What is your website, by the way?
The website is www.tarotla.com.
tarotla.com. Okay. Um, so, I mean, if anyone wanted to go to your website or get in talk, I guess you have contact information on your website.
Right,
So,
everything's on the website. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
When I used to live in LA. Now I'm sort of in the Midwest. But when I was living out there for a while, I would run into actors and actresses, like some celebrities,
Mhm,
that did this. I mean, I remember I was on a set for a movie that it was like a what was that movie? Gosh, it was. I mean, it was a bad movie. But what was it? Well, it was Matt Damon and Greg Kinnear, and they were Siamese twin or the conjoined twin brothers. I can't remember what that
mhm,
movie, but I remember there being a couple of the actresses that were in the movie, and in between sets they had the tarot cards, and I just thought,
mm,
I don't, I guess they were doing it for killing time with other members, or they were practicing, I suppose. I don't know, but
mhm.
but I was just watching them at a distance, and I thought, well, that's interesting that you could. And then I remember reading a story um, about guys that were looking for treasure. I think it was in the 30s or 40s, and they were using the tarot somehow for. I don't know. I,
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know how. So
Oh,
it's.
well, I'll have to try that.
Is there anything that you've done that in when you've done the tarot that has jumped out at you that you said, wow, that is like sort of like Oprah's aha moment. I mean, where something's like, wow, that was like that hit the nail on the head, or is there anything like that you can remember that jumps out at you?
uh, well, actually, when I do the readings, I don't really remember my readings. That's why I tape them for my clients because I'm not going to know really what's this
Oh,
because my information is coming from a different source. So I'm just the channel. So, but I find it fascinating every time I do a reading that there is something that jumps out. I mean, specifically, I really don't know what I could say,
right.
but every time I do a reading, to me, it's always refreshing, and it's always, sometimes I can look at a card that I've used for 15 years and like, wow, I never saw that before. I've never even realized that before. So, I mean, that happens all the time, and that's what I was saying. That's
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about the tarot is that it really is endless. And I think why the tarot is really more acceptable today than it was years ago was is because we have so many decks out there now, and we have the oracle cards. And the oracle cards, like the angel cards, the unicorn cards, and all those, are very sweet and pretty. I like them. I collect them. I will pull a card a day sometimes from a certain deck. But what those cards did is that it made it easier for people to transition into the tarot deck. Because for people who are so against the tarot or so afraid, because it's like the Ouija board, it has this bad, connotation on it.
Hmm.
It's like, oh my God, don't touch it. But when we came, when to start using the oracle decks, it was like, oh, okay, this is a little gentler. This is a little bit more acceptable. So mainstream society was more apt to work with that, and so it was not. It was a nice little bridge to the tarot deck, and so that's why I think the tarot is a little bit more accepted
Hmm.
today than it had been. And those oracle decks are different decks
I
than
guess I
tarot.
I guess I'm not familiar with. I mean, I'm not familiar with that. The Oracle deck.
Oracle decks there's hundreds of them out there now, but like Doreen Virtue did all the angel decks or the animal decks. One of my favorite is by Stephen Farmer, the Power Animal Oracle deck.
Hmm.
And I usually pull a card a day from that. Just kind of, okay, what's my animal totem today? What's the energy I need to work on
Well, that
today?
sounds neat.
Yeah, and or the angel deck too. Which angel can I work with today? So those really became a bridge from mainstream society to the tarot to make it more acceptable because again, the tarot, like the Ouija board, is like very like, no, don't touch it. It's very, evil or
Yeah.
this or that.
I'm
So
I've never
yeah.
ever I never really ever heard anything really. I guess I'm I'm not in the field, so I guess I never really heard anything bad about the tarot. But it's funny how the Ouija board has gotten such a bad and the thing is, I've used a Ouija board, and I don't think I've ever had anything successfully, you know,
Mhm.
spelled out for me. I don't know, maybe I don't know, but I mean, is the Ouija? I mean, you're an expert in the esoteric areas. I mean, is the Ouija board a bad thing? I mean, is it?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't call myself an expert. I think I'm far from that
Well,
because it's ever ending.
of the two
But
of the two of us in this conversation, you're the expert.
but I love the Ouija board. I collect them
Yeah.
because I like there's all different types. I have one that someone made for me a couple of years ago for Christmas, which I treasure. I've never had any problems with them. The people I work with, we've never had any problems. I know many psychics who won't touch them. There's all this stuff out on,
Yeah.
oh, stay away or this and that. It's just a tool like anything else, and it really has a lot to do with our own development. I
Right.
do not recommend anybody to do anything, even like the tarot, the Ouija board, or any occult things without having the knowledge to do them.
Hmm.
Because they are tools, but it's just like a knife. A knife is a tool, and if we don't use it right, if we don't know how to cut what it is we're cutting, we're going to hurt ourselves. And that's what I think happens. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think it's people's own subconsciousness that is hurting themselves. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well,
You know.
do you think the Ouija board actually, is a communicative device to to the other world,
Sure.
or is it
Sure.
or is it like does it tap into the subconscious? I mean, is it something possibly that our subconscious is using, or is it a way for the spirits to use our
Well,
subconscious to
I think
uh,
it could be both.
yeah.
I think it could be both. But I think it. I mean, there's. Yeah, I totally believe that. We can use them. I've used them plenty of times in seances to communicate with the spirits, and many people have
Right.
used them very successfully. Again, I don't recommend anybody to do anything without having the knowledge. Just
Well,
like there's people that are taking they're psychics, taking a 4-week class and they're a psychic, and then they're a medium. It's like
yeah.
that's garbage because there's terrain in that whole astral field that's very dangerous, and you got to have a good roadmap. We better know what it is we're doing.
Well, I have three Ouija boards in my place right now. I mean, they're ones in I mean they're in boxes and stuff. But I remember, but I'm like one guy. How can I? I mean, it's like it's hard to use the Ouija board when you're by yourself. I mean, I never get any.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the only thing it's ever said to me is it says that I am Captain Howdy is one of the things it said. But but I mean,
Really?
you really can't use the Ouija board by yourself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah, some people do.
really.
I don't,
Because
because
I always feel I'm cheating when I
yeah, yeah, really, yeah, exactly. It's just like anything else. So it's to me, it's kind of nice to have other people around because it just, yeah, it's like
if it starts moving, I go, I'm moving it.
Well, it's just like when I do a tarot reading for myself. If I get that devil card, I put it back.
Oh,
I'm like, okay, nobody saw that one.
oh, that's great. You're also a ghost hunter, and this is, I mean, I've done a little ghost hunting, and
Hmm.
nothing professional, but I've seen and videotaped and had like well, actually, I guess one of the first EVPs was a complete accident from just videotaping
Wow.
some friends. I mean, it wasn't even a haunted situation, as far as we knew, a haunted situation, but a voice ended up on on the camcorder that from there was nobody there. I mean,
Wow,
I
that's
mean,
great.
yeah, I mean, so I've known people that have EVP. I mean, actually, there
Hmm.
was a friend of mine who also works in radio, and he was in a studio recording a commercial, and a voice came on that sounded like someone right next to the microphone, saying something, and he was like, well, how did that get here? But I mean, you can always sort of explain things away as like, okay, well, this is just like
Hmm.
like some sort of EMF in the air, just some sort of
Right.
weird stuff. But um, I guess I guess the thing I was thinking about is Has there ever been a time when you've been doing your ghost hunting where you had a Ouija board with you, or I mean, is there have you ever incorporated several things in a
Well,
ghost hunting situation?
usually after we do an investigation, we'll do a séance, and many times we'll bring a Ouija board in.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, many times we will do that. My one of my earliest teachers always said, you always stay in this realm to find your answer, and then if you can't find your answer, then you go over to the invisible world, and that's when we, do the search. And I
Ah,
think what's happening even with the ghost hunting today, from what I see with a lot of groups, there's so many groups out there, with all their electrical equipment,
right.
and nothing's wrong with that.
Sure.
But it seems like they're trying to disprove more than the proving.
Yes.
You
That's
know,
my thought too. I mean,
yeah,
it's
just because a picture isn't just because a picture can be fake doesn't mean it's fake.
right.
Just because that orb may be dust doesn't mean this orb in this picture is dust. And everybody's against orbs, it seems like,
Yeah.
and they're
Oh,
more into disproving than proving. And I
yeah.
think a lot of good evidence is slipping under the rug, per se, because of a lot of the attitudes.
I
It's almost like
yeah.
everybody, the purpose of these ghost hunting teams is to bunk
Yeah,
more than anything.
that is one of my biggest my pet peeves is the whole, and
Mhm.
it's not even just with the paranormal. I mean, it's
Mhm.
this debunking. It's this, what is it? What are they? It's like just being it's that critical thought. It's like,
Mhm.
like you can say, oh, I really like this movie. I really, I went to see this, a beautiful movie, and someone will say, oh, that's a horrible movie. There's just like,
Mhm.
it's just like people they think because they can have a negative opinion, it somehow elevates them. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's just,
Right.
but it's like this thing that just sweeps the country,
Mhm.
where it's like, well, just because, I don't know. I'm not, what it's like, contrarians. They just,
Mhm.
you'll say something and they'll just say the opposite thing because they think that's the way a conversation is supposed to be. Well,
Right.
that's just the way we converse. It's like, no, it's not. I mean, to me, this seems like this is just a recent in the last decade or so,
Oh yeah, yeah, and especially in the paranormal field, because I mean this wasn't here, you know, 10, 15 years ago, and now there's so many paranormal groups out there. It's obscene almost,
Yeah,
because what's happening is that a lot of the places, especially the historical places that we could get into, every group is uh, descending on them, and so now a lot of doors are shutting to us because
right.
people are tired of us. They're like, okay, we've had enough of these groups,
Yeah,
and they just they come in with most of them come in with their machines, and there's so many different groups. Some groups hate psychics, some will work with them, some will use both. And I think the truth is always down the middle road. I think the machines, the electronical stuff is wonderful. I mean, just to be able to use that and have some of the information. But then on the other part, it's don't discount the psychic part of it. I mean, I've been in many haunted places, and there'll be a group come in, and their machines are like, oh, there's nothing here. There's nothing being picked up on the machine,
yeah,
and we're going, wait a
yeah,
minute, listen to all these people's experiences. There is something here.
yeah, yeah.
So
What is like of all the hauntings that you've gone to, what's like the best story that you've come across? I mean, because well, first of all, let me say that you've also been in production on the Bio Channel A&E's My Ghost Story, which I was so excited to be part of on
right,
a
that was great. Yeah, I was a story producer on the two specials on the Biography Channel, My Ghost Stories, and it has gone to series. And I'm no longer with the production, but I was last month when you were there, and talking about the Coral Cafe. And I have been so blessed because I do talk to so many people across the country and listen to their stories. And that's the thing is that yeah, something may be fake, especially now because of the internet and Photoshop and everything else, right?
right.
But it really goes on the credibility of the person. I've come across really good footage that, that looked real, but the person was incredible. And it's like, you know what, this isn't real. So, and vice versa,
Right.
So it's that, but, I think, I would say, from the shows, I think one of the most incredible story that we did was that, I think it was on the first special. Yeah, it was on the first special, 2008, was the Impound Ghost, and that was in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and that was where the spirit of a young woman came back and hovered over her vehicle in an impound yard. And it was
Oh,
caught on
yeah.
camera.
I remember
Now,
seeing that story. Yeah.
yeah, now so many people try to debunk it.
Yeah.
As I think it was on, different networks
Right.
and doing all
I
this
love
stuff.
the way they debunked it. They oh we've saw it. It looked nothing to me. It didn't look anything like the original. And they said yes, a case closed. I was like, really? It didn't
Yeah.
look anything like it to me.
Well, you know what? They don't do the investigation. We spoke with the police officer that was the first arrival on the scene. And we spoke with so many people. That pole that they said that, oh, someone climbed up. It wasn't even secure in the ground at the time. So
Mm.
I think people don't do the investigation. They're more in debunking it. But that was a real heart-rending story to
Yeah.
me. And I think all the stories that we did on the special were really interesting. As far as my own. Um, I've been on a lot of investigations. I think just my own life with my the experiences I had with my father when he passed away, and after that. And I wrote that in my book, Ghost of Orange County. So I went in pretty much detail. But that was probably the most fascinating experience because it went on for months. Went on before he passed away, when he passed away, and for a very long time after he passed away. Just all the different experiences that I had. I saw him on a plane coming from Florida, and he was wearing the clothes he was buried in.
Mm.
He left a message on the answering machine one day when I got home from work.
Yeah.
So it was very, very fascinating.
That's one of the things that when I was reading your book on it was kind of you to give me a copy of the book so that I could have something to read on the way back.
Yeah, really.
Several things that you wrote about. My father just passed away recently,
Yeah, I know.
so
Yeah, that's sad. I'm sorry to hear that.
so
Yeah.
it was good to. I don't know. It kind of I don't know, brought me closer to you in a lot of ways. I don't know. It's just reading what you had gone through. But
Mhm.
did anything? Because the people that I've known that are in this, they have an interest in this field, if you can call it a field, but just
Mhm.
the interest of the thing.
Paranormal.
Yeah, is there's a lot of us that have had something happen at an early age, and I think it's sort of I don't know, altered our thinking that seems to be
Mhm.
different than our friends or who we went to school with because they didn't have, that experience, of something. And
Right.
is there anything that happened to you, in a younger age, or is this
Well,
something that, was triggered with your father? I mean, what do you
you
think
know
about?
what? I really don't. I can't sit here and say, oh, I've been psychic since I was 3 years old, or I've seen dead people. It's
Hmm.
like no, I really had a very normal upbringing, Midwestern life, and it wasn't until probably the mid '80s. I mean, it was always different, and my sister, ever since I was little, always used to kid me and say, you're adopted. The gypsies dropped you off on the doorstep, And so now looking back at my life, it makes sense. And when I was very young, probably around 7 or 8, I had a UFO experience. But I didn't even know it was a UFO experience for probably about 6 years ago when I was talking to somebody. And I'm not really a UFO person,
Right.
it's not my field. So, but that's the only thing. But looking back, it really explains my life. But, as far as it was just a normal childhood, and then probably it was always different. I never fit in, but I didn't know where I fit in. And then fortunately, it was in the 70s, late 70s, I came across, well, my boyfriend, his mother was bohemian, and she was just so sensitive and everything, and she really took me under her wing and really kind of was a very good mentor, and she was a healer, and so she kind of started me on that path. And later on, I got married, and I was married for 16 years, and then even when I was divorced, she stayed very close to my life
Oh,
up
that's
until her
great.
death in 2004. So
Mm.
she was one of my mentors, and she, I think, really saved my sanity in my life.
Yeah. Do you think that um it'll ever get where we'll get I mean, like, I mean, when all do you think we'll ever have the answers to any of this stuff? Because I always think like what'll happen is we'll find an answer for UFOs, and we'll find an answer for, for if there are ghosts and what are ghosts and all this sort of stuff. And once then it'll be like, wow, how did we not know that this was always here? You know what I'm saying? It's
Right,
like I always think about, you know, like like when you think about someone like Isaac Newton and they start like gravity, it's like, well, how did anyone
right.
not know, or how did they not know that the sun was the center, and
Yeah,
we were,
yeah,
it was like, it'll be like that. It'll be one day, it'll be like, well, of course there's ghosts,
yeah.
and but I mean, I always wonder if,
Well, well,
if it's
yeah.
all somehow involved.
I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know the answers. I think we're evolving to where people are more highly aware of the invisible world, and I think it's for some people it's very easy to get in and out of. And sometimes what we think are hauntings, I'm not even sure if they're really hauntings. Maybe we just stepped into their realm. Maybe that haunted home
Yeah,
is their home on another realm.
yeah.
Maybe we stepped into theirs. So I don't think we'll ever have the answer, and I don't think it's fair, personally, for us to say that it is. Yes, we do have the answer, and we
Oh,
do
I
know
know.
how it is.
Right.
And many, there's many people do that. And my question to that, my challenge to that is how can we ever be sure? I mean, there's so many different individuals, and everybody makes that. We all have different personalities. Well, a ghost is going to have its own personality. How it was here is going to be how it is there. And so I don't think we can necessarily say that this is the way it is. All we have is from our experiences, or the experiences of those before, the experiences that have been channeled to us, the information.
Yeah.
But and you know what? I hope in a way that we never know for sure, because that's, to me, is the great mystery in
Oh,
life.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And also, I guess I was thinking like, I think about like sometimes, when I'm thinking about ghosts, and which is a lot. I always wonder like if, what if what we think is a ghost is just somehow like, what if what if everything in history is happening all at the same time?
mhm,
And it's just like it's just like a frequency. Like,
right.
the people that lived in the house that I'm in,
Mhm.
they, from the 40s or whatever, are still here living everything, but it's not that they're dead. It's that the tape is somehow constantly, you know, going,
Exactly.
it's just like
Yeah.
like the grooves of a record. It's
Uh-huh.
like all the grooves are still all spinning at the same time. It's just the needle happens to be in this groove, but all this other groove, and I
That's
think
a good
about,
way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah, and then that is really, one good possibility. And who's to say that all of these things can't be possibilities?
yeah,
That this particular, what we would call haunting, may be that possibility. Maybe another particular haunting is a
sure,
different possibility.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think everything, especially and the spirit world is black and white.
sure,
I mean, because you have a very good point right there. I mean, what if it is all happening at the same time, and there's a frequency that we're there. It kind of reminds me. I think there was a Twilight Zone thing on that, and actually, that what you're talking about occurred to my brother and his wife on vacation, and I think they were in Montana or someplace. It wasn't the Custer Battlefield, but they were someplace out in Wyoming or something, and they were at a rest stop, and as they walked over the hill, they did see a scene of the Indians from, let's say, the early 1800s.
wow,
But yeah. So who's to, I think it's just those glimpses in time that
yeah.
we get. Now, I don't think that was a haunting, that those Indians were on that field that they saw. I think they just glimpsed back in time.
Yeah, it's funny. Doing radio, every once in a while, someone will either call or they'll email me some story. And recently, and not far from where I am right now, currently, a woman in her it was a single mother with a teenage daughter, and they live in a very old a house like from the Civil War. And the daughter one day, I guess, it was dark, and she said, like, Mom, I think you better call the police, or there's somebody outside. I may have told you the story already, but somebody was outside, and it was like a, she said it looked like a homeless guy walking around with a hat on, and it looked like he was carrying a gun, and it looked like he was lost or looking for something. He just kept kind of going around in this one area, and so they ran upstairs to the top room, and were watching him out the top window. And she had a cell phone, and she was calling. And as they were watching, they said it appeared like the guy just faded into the ground, is what the way they described it. And
Wow.
and but and so in talking it over with themselves, they thought, well, this might have been a Civil War guy in the tattered uniform or whatever, and carrying a musket or something, and that's how that, you know, and I don't know why that story always sort of stuck out in my mind,
Yeah.
hearing that, because it's like two people that really aren't interested in that kind of thing, and then something like that unexplainable happens to them.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's and something like that. It could be residual. That it's just they tuned in at that moment. The
yeah,
frequencies, the ions on the planet were right,
right.
or whatever in the atmosphere, and they saw that residual energy, or it could have been the spirit that just manifested itself at that particular time.
Yeah. And
Interesting. Wow.
I always wonder, like, who are we haunting? Like, well, I mean, like, is there someone in the future, or are we haunting the ghost? Because there have been some EVPs that I think are legitimate EVPs, where there seems to be some sort of communication
Mhm.
to spirits, and it sometimes doesn't sound all that friendly. It almost
Mhm.
sounds like the ghost, or the
Mhm.
people talking are terrified of whoever is doing the EVP. I mean, um,
Well,
it,
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. Is that maybe they're, in their realm, and they do. Last night I was on an investigation with just my mom and my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law manages apartments, and one of her apartments, it's very haunted. They've been reported seeing the woman in there, and a lot of things going on, and so it's vacant right now. So when we went in, I mean, yeah, this spirit was very afraid of us and hid in the closet, and I sensed that it was hiding in the closet. And it's funny because when we were taking pictures, we didn't get anything, but when we got to the closet, I said, take a picture in the closet. The camera malfunctioned; it wouldn't
oh,
work.
yeah,
So yeah, I do think that they're afraid of us, and I've been on investigations where I've seen mediums go in and start yelling at these spirits like, "Show yourself!" And I'm like, "Well, hell, I'd be hiding too."
yeah.
Someone comes into my home and starts yelling
Oh,
at me.
yeah. I love how you see these ghost hunters where they say, "Oh yeah, sometimes I have to antagonize the ghost." I said, "Really? Do you think that's right?" And I love how some of them even refer to them like, "When did you die? How did you like? Well, what if they don't know they're dead?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but
And that's the thing is like, do you see your body? Do you know where you're at?
yeah,
Can you tell me? And that's the thing. What I like, I always laugh at some of these programs. It's like, throw something, show me a sign. I'm like, well, you idiot, you're going to get a brick thrown at you. You
right,
know.
yeah,
And it's like, come on, let's have common sense. And my training has been, we teach them as we communicate with them and we reach them just like we would a person here. We have respect for them unless they're going to be an evil spirit, then we don't. And I'm not one that believes in like, oh, just send them light. Heck, if you got somebody breaking down your door to get in your house, aren't you going to call the police?
yeah,
Protect yourself? It's the same thing. But we don't. If I was to come into your home and I start yelling at you to talk to me, wouldn't you just like go like, get the heck out of here?
right, yeah, absolutely.
It's the same thing with the ghost. And I think people just they're out there doing the stuff with no training whatsoever. And who's there's many ways to get trained, but I guess what I'm just saying is know a little bit about the spirit world. and that's what I think a lot of good groups do. They do go and they go on these investigations, and they are respectful to the spirits.
With your book, Ghosts of Orange County, which everyone can get this, like at Barnes Noble or Amazon or
Yeah,
Borders.
it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's in the travel section because that's where they put because it has a location on it.
Yeah, let me just say
And
this, that it's called Ghosts of Orange County, but I've been to Orange County. I mean, it's not like it's not like I
yeah,
would seek this out. I mean, this is as far as there's. It's just that this happens to be the location of some of these stories. But if you're interested in the paranormal, there's some great stories in this. Great
thank you.
locations and um, like of the book. What do you think? Well, the you suffer your father to me is really
I
kind
think
of
that's Yeah, I think that's my favorite story.
yeah.
That really is my favorite story. And the other stories, I tried to pick stories that were um, interesting. The majority are the ones I did investigations on. There were some that were not my investigations, and I give credit where credit is due.
Right.
So I just try to pick some that are really interesting and
Oh, I like the Disneyland stuff too. I
yeah,
thought that,
yeah.
I mean, there's got to be just a ton of stories.
Oh yeah, there's a ton more stories from Disneyland, and then there was Knott's Berry Farm, and that was contributed by my dear friend Marla Brooks, who wrote the Ghost of Hollywood series.
Oh,
That
yeah, that's right.
you know, which is really fascinating because her and Barry Conrad, my partner, all of us, did all these investigations. Scott Michaels with the Dearly Departed tours in
Mm.
Hollywood. And and Marla knows she lives right in the heart of Hollywood forever, and so it was really fascinating to go to these places because I was from Orange County, so I mean I would never drive to Hollywood. It was just too much for me.
Right.
So between her and Barry and Scott, they knew all the history, and I come in and it was just fascinating. Like the Hollywood Wax Museum is one of my favorite stories from there, and so we have that. But in the Ghost of Orange County. It was. I tried to make it real personal. My old home that I lived in, my friend
Yeah.
Barbara that died, and my aunt, and just real personal.
I actually think I may have gone on a hunt with Marla. Um,
Oh, really?
I believe so. I may be wrong, but there was a time where I went to I think it was called the Vogue Theater, and it was on Hollywood Boulevard, and it was closed. I mean, it was shut. It was like
Uh huh.
they didn't show movies or anything, and and she was with another gentleman. I can't remember what his name was, but we were in there, and I guess it was funny because when I went in, I started immediately having like an asthma attack. I started like
Wow.
choking, and she immediately she called some other people over, and she says, now this is interesting because at this location before Hollywood or whatever, it had been like a school, like a schoolhouse that had burned with kids inside. And
Wow.
so she's like, maybe you're choking on the smoke or something. But there was also supposedly a dead projectionist, and I don't know. But I believe it. I know her name was Marla, and I always I was like looking at the photo, and I was like, could this be her? But that was a fascinating night. But Hollywood
Wow.
has so many great stories.
Yeah.
There was um and I was thinking there's this one place that I wish I knew where it was. I know it was in the Hollywood Hills, but it used to be someone fairly famous back in the 20s or 30s, like an old, silent movie star house that actually, as far as I can tell, just from the footage that I had seen, was probably the most haunted place that had been recorded. I mean, actual objects moving and things like
Wow.
that. I was just wondering if you ever what is like the most haunted place do you think that either that you've been to or that you're aware of that you would like to go to, that you would love to.
Besides my home.
Yeah, or is that your home? That's the one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're always got stuff going on.
Yeah.
The most haunted place that I've been to, or I would say, I think one of the creepiest places that I've been to was the Waverly Sanitarium in
Oh,
Kentucky.
wow.
And because we used that on one of our stories, but we had just come back there to do some um, local shots of another investigation, and that was very, very creepy. That to me was
Yeah.
one of the creepiest places I've ever walked into.
I mean, because it's not an exaggeration to say that like thousands of people died there, right? I mean, because it
Yeah,
went with the what was it, cholera or what was the?
TB,
Oh,
TB.
that's
It was
right.
an old.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's well, any of those old sanitariums. I mean, they're absolutely just creepy.
Yeah.
I think I loved the Queen Mary. I used to do the ghost tours on the Queen Mary just temporarily for a couple months, a couple years ago, and that is just always fascinating to
Yeah.
me. And the experiences, even doing the ghost tour, and it's the real paranormal ghost tour. I mean, that people would have would be great. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
well, one of the things I was thinking about the Queen Mary. I actually had a friend that that has no interest in. I mean, is actually one of the people that is so critical and just doesn't believe anything. But they when they went on the Queen Mary, there was a whole thing with a little girl, and several people, and including this person, actually heard the little girl,
mhm.
and I think was completely his whole life changed after
Well,
it opened his. It was like, okay, well, maybe this is something that's possible.
yeah, well, that the Queen Mary, I mean, besides being really steeped in history, and then being it was called the Gray Ghost because it transported the troops, during
Oh
World War
yeah,
II and everything, and then it had the accident with the I forget the other ship. I used to know this because I did the tour 4 nights a week, but it's
yeah,
been a couple of years, but there's I mean, you can go down. We'd go down 40 feet below sea level and to the hull, and I mean, you could hear these incredible voices. And what you're talking about is the little girl in the pool named
oh,
Jackie.
that's
And
right, yeah,
I've heard her. I've heard her before, and many people have heard her. And it is
wow,
really it's eerie because you're like, whoa, And the Queen Mary being where it's docked, right there in Long Beach, is right across from San Pedro. And
mm,
back in the 20s, San Pedro was considered one of the most, if not the most dangerous seaport in the world. It was more dangerous than Shanghai. And along Beacon Street there, I mean, it was, if a sailor came out alive, he was lucky. And that's why, in '89, Barry Conrad did that San Pedro haunting, and his book just came out this year, An Unknown Encounter, and he's had the DVD out for a number of years. It was on Sci-Fi, An Unknown Encounter, and it's about the case of Jackie Hernandez in San Pedro, and where his a photographer that was with him, his friend Jeff
that
Wheatcraft, was hung in the
yeah,
attic.
that
I
to
mean,
me
he survived.
that
Yeah.
that is one of this to me the scariest things. If anyone has, I mean, you think if someone searched that online, they would find the where they could get the DVD? I mean, the DVD's for sale, right?
Well, yeah, the DVD, you can go to worldoftheunknown.com, or you can get it on Amazon, actually. We have it on Amazon, or, the link is from my
Oh,
website. But
excellent.
yeah, you
Okay.
can, yeah. And the book also, in fact, I think we were going to give you a book, and it got busy when you were here, so I'm gonna send one out to you.
Oh, that'd be great.
But because it's very detailed and there's a lot of pictures,
Yeah.
but
I so wanted
oh,
to talk to Barry about that because to me
yeah.
that's when I first, I mean, it was years ago when I saw that whole thing, but
Oh, yeah,
when
yeah.
when that shot, I guess, is it Barry that reaches the camera up and is taking pictures into the
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
he
he
just
just
had that camera on.
yeah, and then the guy I guess it's like an old wire. It's like an old extension cord or something, and it's put it over
The
his. Is it what it is?
Yeah, it was an old
Oh,
clothesline.
clothesline, yeah.
An old
And
clothesline.
it's in the attic, and something is pulling his legs out. Am I right
Yeah,
about that? And so it's
yeah,
and he's hanging, but the look on his face
right.
is just terrifying. And
And so the book goes into a lot more that's not in the DVD, of course,
yeah,
But what was really fascinating about that, well, not for the photographer, but for Jeff, I mean, he was a pure skeptic, and he didn't want anything to do with us. He was just him and Barry were working on a couple shoots
right,
together, and then months later, when Jackie had moved up to Weldon, California, and that's about 3 hours north of here, out in the sticks. When they went up there, because it had followed her there, they were working with the Ouija board, and that's when the spirit threw Jeff up against the wall and
mm,
knocked him out. So I guess because Jeff had the look of his killer. But you ought to
Yeah.
have Barry on your
Oh,
show, and
I
then he'll
totally,
go
yeah,
into
absolutely.
definitely.
If you can, I know if you can put a
I'll
good
let
word
him
in for,
know. Yeah,
but
yeah.
but when I was there that day on the set for the
Hmm.
show, I wanted to talk to him about it, but everything was, we were all so
Oh,
busy.
he's so busy. Yeah.
But that has always stayed with me because whenever I run into anybody where I've actually photographed or videotaped anything that I think is an orb, and it's of course like we said earlier,
Right.
people are just so quick to jump on like, oh, orbs mean nothing, it's just dust.
Right.
But to me, that video of that footage that Barry got, because
Hmm.
there's like it's in broad daylight. You see this thing. It looks like a blue marble to me. It's
Hmm.
floating through the air, and you see it goes through this gate, and a gate opens up just as it's
Hmm.
going through. And then I
Yeah.
think at one point you actually see maybe another door in the house where it's going through. So I mean, it's not, it's totally an orb, and there's no way that is a dust particle.
Right.
People, you
And they
have
had
to
it.
find this video.
Yeah,
It's
he had it
awesome.
analyzed and everything. And in the book, it does mention that on the DVD, but in the book it goes more into detail about that.
Yeah.
But everything had been analyzed, so it wasn't everything being taken at face value.
Right.
And this is another thing when we were working on the specials. We really handpicked these stories, and you know, again, things today can be faked a lot more than
Sure.
they were. This was 20 years ago,
Oh
so
yeah, it was before Photoshop. I mean,
yeah, yeah, this was all before
yeah.
Photoshop. So I think, and what I find fascinating is people are always quick to say, "Oh, that's not real," before they do any investigative work into it. But it really is a fascinating story, and the DVD is great. The book is scarier than anything,
Oh.
and it's very good.
And
Yeah.
what's your
So
website again?
my website is tarotla.com,
Okay. And
and Barry's is worldoftheunknown.com.
but they can get to Barry's from yours as well.
Yeah, on the links section, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I know I could go on and on with you because you are a plethora of I mean, you have all the skills and the access
Thank
to all
you.
this sort of stuff. And well, in your real quick, in your house, your house is haunted. So what do you think's going on in your house? I mean, what do you
Well, you know what? I think it's just people that come and go because whenever, I think when people are psychics, I mean, it's like we have this neon light out, the ethereal world, like, welcome here, come
Yeah.
here. And also because we do a lot of investigations, sometimes they do follow us home, and so you got to be careful about that.
Mm.
But it's nothing for we've come in and the dining room chairs have been on the floor, or something has lifted up right in front of us, or you know it's amazing. Doors open and close. A lot of different things go on. So it's to us it's like, okay, who's here? All right, whatever.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times it happens right, as I'm going to sleep, we're going to sleep, and I'm like, look, if you want to talk to me, do it in the daytime. I'm tired now. So yeah, I have to have a sense of humor too.
Right. Well, and let me say this on the season that's about to come out of My
Hmm.
Ghost Story that you've done. What is the best story, that you've come across on that?
Well, when I was working on the show, like I won't be having any credits on the show. I'm no
Mm.
longer on that. But when I was working on it, I did work on a story that it was really fascinating. It was from Arkansas, and the woman had gotten a picture. She was doing an investigation in an old spa, or it's called the Majestic Hotel. It's a spa, and all of a sudden you see an orb fly by, and the shower curtain, because it was a shower stall, just goes flying out.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
amazing. So that, I think, from the stories that Barry and I brought, I don't know what other stories they have after I left, but they are that one was really fascinating.
Hmm.
That was good. So that will be a good one.
Gosh, I was
So,
hoping you were going to say mine, but
oh, I'm sorry. Yours is good too. Well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, now I'm totally embarrassed. Well,
man,
I
no,
love
no,
the.
I wasn't meaning that at all. But
I know. Well, you see, I think the Coral Cafe was fascinating.
yeah,
And I just, in being over there, we eat there. You've eaten there 100 times, and the stories and everything. I thought that footage was very interesting.
yeah,
And it's interesting because that footage, along just like the impound ghost and other footage, people have said that's not real. People
Yeah.
said that's fake, that's not real, it's this or that. And it's like people are going to think what they are, but again, you go on the credibility of the people and the experiences. There's experiences there.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I've gone back and forth on the footage myself, even though that, I'm the one in possession of the footage, but
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, if you get something and it just seems like, well, I've debunked it to myself so many times. It's just like, there's
right.
just no, but there's years and years of stories of this
That's it.
place. It's like, oh, what, just forget, let's just forget about this footage. Let's just go with the
Just
stories, and it's just
Yeah, and you go with the
fascinating.
credibility of the people. Now, if there was no story there, then okay, it's something else.
Yeah,
But the footage is really incredible, and there's just so many stories. And again, and just because something can be fake doesn't mean it is.
right.
And like you said, you talk to yourself to debunk it. And my training is that we always want to scrutinize everything first, because we want to play devil advocate to ourselves, because we
Sure.
have our reputation on the line. And so we don't want to be out there just saying this or that.
Yeah.
So I think what people don't understand is that as researchers, and we always question everything.
Yeah.
I think we have to have a healthy amount of skepticism. If we don't, we're working on dangerous ground. And people who go in believing everything are just as bad as the people who go in disbelieving everything,
Sure. Yeah.
because having either too much of an open mind or too much, I mean, it's not even an open mind,
Right.
that's a gullible mind. Having a gullible mind and then being totally closed, you really, the truth will never be seen. It's
Yeah.
always,
I
I think
used
that's a Buddhist philosophy, it's always the middle road.
I used to have this doctor, and he was an Indian. He used to say, and he sounded just like Gandhi. He'd say, "Jerry, it's okay to have an open mind, but just not so open that your brain fall out." It's like, so, so it's
I
like that.
love it. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's so great that you did this show, and if you can put a word in with Barry, I'd love to
Oh yeah,
have him.
I'll mention it to Barry, and
Yeah.
I am so happy that you asked me. I've had so much fun, and hopefully we can do this again sometime on pick a subject or whatever you
Yeah.
want.
Do you
I loved it.
Yeah, do you if someone listening to this wanted to have a tarot reading by you, they can go to your website and get contact information, right? It's all on your page that you can, or do you actually
Right,
do that? I mean, would you do that with someone if they wanted to get a reading, you'd be able to handle that, right?
right. Well, all they do is just go to the website, and they have that, and I have PayPal and everything, and um, I do phone readings all the time for people
Oh,
across the country.
oh, that's
So it
great.
does, and so if they're local, then I have a place that I would go to read, and then if they're distance, then I definitely do phone readings. So
So
yeah, all that information is on the site.
if you tell Victoria that Jerry Lentz sent you, she'll let you have it at the regular price.
There you go. There you go.
Well, have a great time. Thanks so much for doing this.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry.
Add Jerry as a Facebook friend.